Hello there guys, you're listening to Ebird Online, and it would seem that 90 Day Fiance have given us a week off. Well, real talk, they've given us a season off, but we won't dwell on that. They've given us a week off because of the Super Bowl, so I'm going to give you a couple of specials this week, and the first one of these is my long promised special on Natalie. So it's my contention that Natalie manipulates Mike, she gaslights him, she uses her body language and moods to attempt to always get what she wants, and also to attempt to discombobulate and wrong foot Mike. And it would seem that Mike's either too good natured to notice, or he's willfully choosing to close his eyes, and whichever that is, the eBird's here to catalogue the top 15 times that Natalie has used her manipulation techniques on Mike to get what she wants. So just before we begin, I just want to say that the things that I'm going to talk about are specific to what we've seen of Natalie and Mike on this season's 90 Day Fiance. It's not an attempt to analyse the nature on all Russian or Russo-Ukrainian women. And I also want to invite you guys to subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already, and a massive thank you to all of those that have already subscribed. And also don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Ebird99. So Mike met Natalie through his friend's wife, and they're both godparents to the same child. And when I first saw these guys, I really did think that they seemed to be a good match in terms of looks, in terms of age, and also in terms of what they wanted from life. They both want to have kids, they both want to settle down, and so it seemed like a great match. And Natalie said of Mike in the first instance, she liked him because he had a kind and beautiful smile, and when she was with him she felt like home. And when we all initially saw them, they seemed to have chemistry. But as the season continued, I think that was all an act. So here are the top 20 times that Natalie has tried to manipulate Mike to get what she wants. So as we know, Natalie has studied journalism and psychology, and I think that her study of psychology has led her to know how to manipulate people in order to get what she wants. And she does this by a mixture of the language she uses, gaslighting, of body language, and also good old-fashioned petulance. So without further ado, here's the eBird's list. And manipulation number 1 was for the benefit of us, the viewers, and of course for Mike. So Natalie pretended when she went to meet Mike at the airport that she was worried that he might not turn up, and she said she's really nervous, and she went shopping with her friends to decide to buy the perfect dress. And when she finally saw Mike at the airport, she acted as if she was really relieved and so grateful that he'd turned up. And I think this was all an act from Natalie. She wanted to pretend to Mike that she was in some way inferior in a sense, and to intimate to Mike, you mean an awful lot to me, I love you, and I'm worried that you may leave me. But as we get later into the season, we clearly saw that she was never ever worried about Mike coming. And also when I look back on this, I can clearly see that Natalie is acting, both for the cameras and for Mike. And manipulation number 2 concerns a time when Mike first got over to the Ukraine, and as we remember, she told Mike, please come over, my visa hasn't gone through, and I want you by my side so that we can sort this out. So they were sitting in the kitchen, and Mike was talking about the visa, and Natalie was saying, yeah, and then she started looking coy and embarrassed and saying, I want to talk to you about something. And as he was talking about the visa, she was pretty much blanking him, and then she said, I'm really worried to ask. And then she said, I want to have a child. In fact, I want to have a child whilst you're here in the Ukraine. And she was all softly spoken and sweet about it all. And then when Mike said no, Natalie flipped. She gave him an icy cold stare and she said, give me the reason. And then when Mike said, yes, I want to have a child with you, but I want to wait 1 until you've got the visa and 2 until you're in the United States, she gave him the absolute evil eye, because even though his reasons were completely valid and she had no verbal reason to disagree with him, she wasn't happy with what she heard. And again, she tried to manipulate him by first being all coy and sweet and childlike, and as soon as he said something that she didn't want to hear, she flipped like a light switch and went into evil mode. And manipulation number 3 was again for the benefit of Mike and the benefit of the viewer. She said, I want Mike to meet my friends. So she went out to meet her friends, and obviously her friends don't know Mike. Anything they do know about him is what Natalie's told them. And they were sitting in a restaurant, and her friends started saying, Mike's really poor, her ex-husband's really rich, I don't think Mike has the money to look after her. And then they were saying he must get a second job, even though they had no idea how much Mike earned, because he doesn't earn enough to keep Natalie. And even though Natalie pretended to be upset with her friends and said, I don't like being attacked, she didn't think of the fact they're not attacking you, Natalie, they're attacking Mike. And where have they got all this from? It can only be from you. And at this point you didn't defend Mike, and you didn't say, I'm really in love with him, or we get on really well. All you said was, I'm angry angry with them for saying what they said, but you knew at some point Mike would see this, and that we all would see it, and it's another way to try and manipulate us all into thinking that Mike's not quite good enough for you. And manipulation number 4 again concerns her ex-husband, and it seems to me that Natalie uses her ex-husband and puts whatever she wants onto her ex-husband to back up what she wants at any given point. So one week she said he was controlling and that her mum didn't like him and that he didn't want children, and she told Mike this was a plus point for him because her mum loves Mike. But then the following week she said he was a very good husband and he understood her, and she further said he really understands me, we are same and you are different. So why did you do that, Natalie? She wants Mike to feel under pressure and to scramble to try and be as good a husband as her ex. And yet again, she seeks to discombobulate Mike and confuse him. And manipulation number 5 concerns when they were running in the park. So Natalie's extremely sporty and she runs every day. And she knew when she met Mike that Mike wasn't massively sporty, although she knew he did exercise because he managed to lose 300 pounds. But she told us all she wants to show to Mike that the sport life is cool. And so she takes Mike out to the park. And as Mike's running, she's saying faster, faster, and run like this and don't run like that. Run on the balls of your feet. Breathe deeply, breathe properly, Mike. And even she says she was a biatch to Mike, although this amused her somewhat. And Mike asked her, did you run with your ex-husband? And she said straight away, oh, because my ex-husband went running with me, you think you can take the place of my ex-husband? You think you can be just like him? It's going to take more than that, Mike. And Mike wasn't saying that at all. Mike was just trying to get a deeper understanding of your relationship with your ex-husband. But yet again you flipped the switch, and although Mike was doing exercise because you wanted him to, you then put up your hood and drew the drawstring and gave him evil eyes. And so you managed to take something that Mike was doing with you to bond your relationship together and try to insinuate that Mike was in somehow trying to emulate or compete with your ex-husband. And it was just another manipulative trick for Mike. And manipulation number 6 was at exactly the same time. Mike tentatively asked her how she felt about her ex-husband, and she absolutely snapped at him, and she said, you can't talk about my ex-husband. And even though she and Mike have both been divorced for 2 years and both had somewhat acrimonious divorces, you told him it was unfair for him to bring up your ex-husband. Natalie, you sat and cried about your ex-husband in the restaurant just the day before, and your friend said to Mike your ex-husband really upset you. And obviously Mike's in the dark as to exactly what happened and exactly how and exactly why you split. So in his effort to try and find out more about you via finding out about the relationship between you and your ex-husband, you managed to turn it against him and act as if he was prying and trying to gain information that he had no right to ask. This was extremely unfair. And now there are 2 reasons that you could have done this. 1, because you're possibly not over your ex-husband, or 2, for some reason you don't think Mike deserves to know, even though you want to marry him and have a child with him, about what broke down your previous relationship. Only a narcissist thinks you should be able to have all of those things, but at the same time give absolutely no information about yourself and your previous relationship. And manipulation number 7 was when Natalie asked Mike to go to church with her. So Natalie knows that Mike's not a Christian. Nevertheless, she sought to try and change him into being Christian, or into at least say that he's Christian, so that they could bring their child up in Christianity. And she took Mike into the church, and it was a beautiful church, and she showed him around, and she lit a candle and said a prayer for herself. But then when they were talking later, she said, Mike, will you go to church with me in America? And she's always pushing, trying to get more. And Mike very reasonably said, I'm not going to promise something that I don't know that I'm going to be able to do. And as per usual, Natalie started sulking. So she was very happy when Mike was doing what she wanted to do, but at the first sign of the word no, sulking Natalie came out. And this manipulation, I think, was one in which she tried to manipulate him by actually asking him whilst he was in the church. And I think in some way that she thought he might feel guilty or he might feel disrespectful to say no, and she could actually trick him into saying yes and then hold him to it whilst he was in America. And very closely linked to this is manipulation number 8. When he said no, Natalie skitzed again, and she actually said, this relationship's not going to work. I can't go out with somebody that's not a Christian. People that aren't Christians lie and they cheat and they steal and they're not moral people. Natalie, you knew all along that Mike wasn't Christian, and this didn't seem to bother you before. Now suddenly it's really important to you. And I think that all along Natalie thought, I can just change him to be Christian. This alien thing sounds like absolute absolute rubbish. I'm good looking enough and alluring enough to Mike for him to pretend that he's going to be a Christian just for me. And when he said he wouldn't do it, she then tried to manipulate him by implying that then he must be a liar or a cheat or a thief or a non-moral person. But Mike's a lot stronger than Natalie thought, and he resisted this tactic by Natalie, and again she wasn't happy and she went into a major strop. But what also really struck me was the fact that if Natalie's such a strong Christian, Natalie, why are you going against one of the major Christian teachings, which is not to have a child outside of marriage? You're very much prepared to have a child with Mike here and now, even though you're going to be living in different countries outside of marriage. And this proves to me this whole Christian thing for you is just a way to make Mike conform with what you want and the way that you want to live. If you were really truly into the teachings of Christianity, you wouldn't consider purposefully having a child outside of wedlock. And manipulation number 9 was the following morning from the visit to the church. Natalie was with her mum in the kitchen, and obviously they'd been talking about kids. And when Mike got up, Natalie's mum started whittering on about 1 kid, 2 kids, 3 kids, 4. And how many grandkids are you going to give me, Mike? And Natalie, well, she completely refused to speak to Mike at all, although Mike didn't know what he'd done, and nor did we. Natalie ran out of the room and she curled up like a little kid in bed, and her mum went to pet her and tell her that everything would be okay. When Mike walked in, she sent her mum out, and then she started telling Mike, oh, it's my mum, she's putting pressure on me to have grandkids, and she's the one forcing this narrative. Natalie, no, she isn't. She might be putting normal motherly pressure, but you know, just before Mike walked in, you were both talking about that. Otherwise there would have been no reason for you to completely ignore Mike when he walked in, and for you to refuse to translate for him what your mum was saying. You engineered this whole argument and this whole thing to put the pressure on Mike to have a child, and you thought, okay, I've asked Mike, he said no to me, maybe now if my mum puts pressure on him, he won't be able to deny her. And as the days go on, Natalie becomes more and more manipulative and brings more and more people into her manipulation. And manipulation number 10 was when she was lying on the bed and she intimated to Mike that things were over. She said, we're so different. I am a Christian and you are not. I don't eat meat, you eat meat. What do you know? All you do is bowling. You don't care about anything. You don't believe in anything. You don't like to keep fit and you eat any old food. I like to eat healthily. My husband understands me. You don't understand me. Our child's going to be so confused. He's not going to know if he's a Christian or if to believe in aliens. And she knew that they were opposites in all of these aspects many, many months ago. But she suddenly decides to start crying and to list all of these things in the hope of one thing, to make Mike agree, okay, let's bring our child up as a Christian then. But as soon as Mike took to the streets in his pyjamas, Natalie then was really worried, and she tells us that she was worried that Mike might get attacked or taken advantage of in Kiev. But really she was worried that Mike was just going to say to her, Natalie, it's over, you're a loon ball. And manipulation number 11 was later that same day. When Mike finally returned, we can all remember Natalie sitting on the window ledge with her eyes wide and childlike and her knees drawn up to her chest, and she was pretending to cry and be really upset, and she was talking like this, like a little child. And Mike was trying to explain his point of view and why he had to get away from things and think about things, and he more or less said to her, is it your contention that we cannot get on because I'm not a Christian? If so, then I don't see where we go from here. And again, because she saw, oh my god, he's going to pull the rug out from underneath me, she said, do you mind if I sit next to you? And Mike said yes, and she went and actually sat on his knee like a little child, and she pulled her legs up and sat in a fetal position. And let's remember that Natalie is 35. She has a degree in psychology and a degree in journalism. She's travelled around the world with her ex-husband, and she's a very robust person. Why are you pretending to be like a little child, Natalie? Come on now, we can all see through that. And manipulation number 12. So this is when Natalie said she didn't love Mike to the TLC production team. So they asked her, are you in love? And Mike said yes. Then they asked Natalie, and there was a very, very long silence. And then Natalie said, we can grow to love each other. And of course, Mike was extremely upset. And I've thought a lot about this, and I thought, was Natalie just telling the truth that she didn't actually love him? Or was this a power play? And I think it was a power play. I think she was trying to sort of say, Mike, come and chase me. You love me and you've said so, but I'm not sure if I love you. And she obviously knew she'd done wrong, because she then tried to talk around the situation and say, what I said was this and what I said was that. We know what you said, Natalie. We all heard. And this conversation was just before Mike was due to go back to the States. And obviously Mike was packing furiously, and Natalie was sitting there sulking, and she started saying to Mike, can we stop this farce? Can we stop this now? And she tried to actually gaslight him and pretend that it was no big deal what she was saying, and that it was Mike that was being unreasonable. Mike's been in the Ukraine for 2 weeks, and at no point point did Natalie say, "My feelings have changed," or "I'm not sure about how I feel towards you." She waited until the cameras were there, and I think this was a power play from Natalie. And she even tried to gaslight us. And she said, "Don't try to tell me that most people are in love when they get married. Most people try and work towards it, and they grow to love each other." No, Natalie, most people at the time that they actually get engaged know that they want to be together forever, and they're actually in love at that point. I know that things can change, but if things do change, it's usually incumbent upon one partner to advise the other person of this change, and also to do so sensitively and in a nice manner. You did it somewhat aggressively and then somewhat defensively, and you decided to use the fact that you weren't 100% sure if you loved Mike or not to maximum effect in telling him in front of other people and in front of the cameras. And manipulation number 13 is possibly one of the only ones in which Natalie has actually admitted that she was attempting to be devious. So Mike obviously had given Natalie an engagement ring, and the stone to that ring was from his mother, so it had sentimental value to him, in and above the fact that it was a ring that he'd bought for Natalie. And when Mike was going home, Natalie decided to throw the ring at him, and after doing so, she actually admitted to us that she did it in order to provoke a reaction from Mike and to make him take the ring and forcibly say, "Natalie, I want you to wear the ring, I want you to have the ring." But it didn't work. Mike just took the ring and Mike went home with it. And in Natalie's world, being utterly disrespectful and throwing an engagement ring at somebody is code for, "Still tell me that you want me, Mike." Natalie, why not just say, "Mike, I really, really like you. I want us to stay together. Let's sit down and talk about this properly." Instead of saying to him, "Let's just stop this farce," and giving him silly little tests such as throwing a ring at him. And it's the only time when Natalie's tried to be devious and she's actually admitted it. And manipulation number 14 made very uncomfortable watching. And so they were going to the airport in a taxi, and Mike was understandably in a particularly bad mood. So Natalie said, in order to release some pressure from Mike, she decided to talk to him. And she said, "You're a good man. Everything is okay. You're a handsome man. Everybody loves you. Your mummy loves you. Your daddy loves you." And she was basically ridiculing him in the taxi. Mike knew this, and he said she was being very childish. But again, she was trying to manipulate him into some sort of reaction. I think she wanted him to either snap at her so she could play victim, or she wanted something from him. Instead of just being straight again, Natalie plays her games. And manipulation number 15 is when she decided to deny what she'd said in terms of not loving Mike and to repackage it. And so she tells us, "What I actually said is to build a relationship, it's a hard job, and love doesn't come right away, and we will grow to love each other. Natalie, everybody knows what you said, including Mike. Don't try and put a good gloss on it now. Stop trying to gaslight him into pretending that he's in some way overreacted or in some way being super sensitive. What you said is hurtful, and what you said is contrary to what you've said previously to him. In accepting an engagement ring, you're agreeing that you're in love with him, and now you've changed your mind. There's no point in trying to gaslight Mike into believing it's somehow his fault or somehow he's childish for wanting to go and catch his flight and not to discuss it with you any further, thus missing his flight." So that's pretty much everything for Natalie's manipulation. I know that we've missed some from this list, but there were so many to choose from, I had to actually decide which were the worst offenders. And this list should be a lesson to Mike. You should get out whilst you can. You can't rely on the aliens to save you. Natalie thinks only of herself and only of what she wants, a child and somebody with money and somebody that's upstanding that she knows will always pay whether you're together or not. Natalie will use her friends, her mum, production and anybody else to manage to hammer home her point. She doesn't think anything about your feelings and thinks only of herself at all times. Mike, get out of the fire before you get burned. I don't understand Natalie, and at this juncture in time I think it would be foolhardy to try. All I know is that she's a manipulative, devious, gaslighting character who seeks to influence Mike for her own advantage. So that's everything, guys. Let me know what you think in comments down below. Do you agree with my assessment? Are there any particular times that she's manipulated that you think I've missed from the list? Please put your comments down below and I'll answer as many as I can. Just before I go, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already, and I'll see you soon with another 90-day special. You've been listening to Ebird Online. Ciao for now.